A young boy of 10 accompanied his mother on an errand to purchase bread. Unexpectedly, a motorcycle approached them, and a rider wearing motorcycle club insignia stopped abruptly upon learning the child's surname. The events that unfolded weren't mere chance, sympathy, or acts of kindness, but rather a history that wouldn't remain hidden. The fuel station was located in an unremarkable area where two rural roads met, a spot someone long ago deemed suitable for construction. On this particular Thursday afternoon, the midday customers had departed and the evening patrons hadn't yet arrived. Near the convenience store entrance stood Danny Preston, observing his mother's figure moving through the store aisles. She'd instructed him to remain by the vehicle, but he disobeyed. The sound arrived before anything else, a profound, distinctive rumble that vibrated in your torso before your hearing fully processed it. Danny rotated as the motorcycle approached the third fuel pump, its polished metal reflecting the late fall sunshine. The motorcyclist shut off the motor and dismounted with the fluid movements of someone who'd performed this action countless times. Danny's breathing stopped momentarily. The jacket was black leather, softened with age at its borders, with patches carefully sewn in organized lines across the rear. A curved patch adorned the shoulders, insignia he knew from the hidden photographs in his mother's wardrobe, images he'd studied during restless nights. His father positioned beside a motorcycle resembling this one, dressed in an identical vest. His legs moved involuntarily. Though 10 years old, he still struggled with proper stranger etiquette, yet something compelled him forward. He halted several feet distant, fingers thrust into his coat pockets. "Pardon me," he said. The man pivoted, somewhere in his mid-40s or beyond, sporting a graying facial hair and eyes weathered from excessive wind exposure. His expression wasn't smiling, but neither did he appear irritated, simply expectant. "My father," Danny began, then hesitated. His voice felt constricted. "He wore insignia similar to yours." The motorcyclist's demeanor changed, an emotion crossing his features that Danny couldn't interpret. "Yeah? Which organization?" Danny revealed the chapter name his father had been affiliated with. The group William, though Danny was unaware of his identity yet, had participated in for 23 years. "What was your father called, son?" "Robert Preston." William's grip on the fuel nozzle became motionless. For an extended moment, he remained frozen, staring at Danny as though attempting to solve an impossible riddle. Then he replaced the nozzle deliberately, secured it, and crouched to eye level. "Rob Preston," he echoed, his tone subdued. Rob operated a '98 Softail. He had that ridiculous carburetor joke he repeated every single time we refueled. Danny nodded, his throat constricting, tears threatening. Nobody mentioned him casually anymore, without formality or heaviness. "I was acquainted with your father." William rose gradually, stroking his beard. "Traveled with him for approximately 5 or 6 years. I attended his memorial service." He paused, his following statement emerging cautiously, almost bewildered. "Nobody mentioned he had a child. Mother didn't inform many individuals." Danny's words were nearly inaudible. She claimed it simplified matters. From the adjacent garage, a mechanic in oil-stained work clothes had ceased pretending to service the Chevrolet he was meant to be working on. Earl had been partially listening since the child had approached the biker, and now he advanced, cleaning his palms on a cloth that only worsened their condition. "Rob Preston," Earl stated, not exactly questioning. Tall individual, consistently paid with currency, overtipped. William glanced toward him. You knew him. Repaired his motorcycle multiple times. Earl regarded Danny, recognition appearing on his features. He arrived punctually for every scheduled appointment, inquired about my granddaughter, recalled her identity, remembered her softball tryouts. During his final visit, he gave me $40 for a $30 oil service. He shook his head deliberately. That occurred 2 weeks prior to the collision. I was unaware he'd father-child. Danny sensed the burden shifting internally, not vanishing, but finally distributed. These men retained memories with specific, mundane details proving his father had existed beyond the sorrow filling their residence, beyond the accumulated unpaid hospital invoices, beyond being the cause of his mother's concealed crying. What's your age? William inquired. 10. So you were approximately 8 during the incident? Correct. William exhaled gradually, and Danny identified the expression crossing his features. He'd witnessed it on his mother's face countless times. That instant when someone calculated the mathematics and comprehended how much a child that age understands, how much weight he'd been bearing alone. Is your mother aware you're conversing with me? She's in the store. Danny indicated the building. She'll likely emerge shortly. What will she think regarding you speaking with an unfamiliar motorcyclist in a parking area? Danny's shoulders elevated in an attempted casual shrug that failed. She worries about things. It was the understatement of his brief existence. His mother fretted about everything presently. Financial obligations, rejected insurance claims, whether Danny consumed adequate food, whether he remained too silent, whether mentioning his father's identity would destroy whatever precarious equilibrium they'd established. Consequently, Danny had learned to carry it independently. The recollections, the inquiries, the burden of missing someone he'd barely known. William appeared to interpret something in the subsequent silence. He retrieved his phone, examined the display, then returned his attention to Danny. Listen, son, I'm placing a call. Is that acceptable? Danny nodded, uncertain of alternatives. William stepped away slightly, phone at his ear, voice lowered. Earl remained nearby, not exactly hovering but present, a silent observer to something developing that none had anticipated. Inside the establishment, Danny's mother selected bread, peanut butter, the most economical pasta sauce brand. She contemplated whether they could afford poultry this week. She wasn't considering the past, arriving at the third pump on a motorcycle, or her son finally discovering someone who remembered. Lisa emerged through the glass entrance with her hip, plastic bags suspended from both arms. She devoted 17 minutes inside comparing cost per unit, calculating what could stretch until her subsequent paycheck. The mental calculations never ceased. Every transaction was a negotiation with circumstances. She looked toward their vehicle and didn't locate Danny. Her heart pounded against her chest. She scanned the area, spotted him near the pumps, conversing with a leather-clad man, a motorcyclist standing inappropriately close. Her son's face tilted toward a stranger's, animated in a manner she hadn't observed in months. The bag struck the ground before she realized she'd released them. Danny. She was advancing rapidly, her nursing footwear striking against the concrete. Danny, distance yourself from him. Her son rotated, confusion appearing on his features. Mom, it's fine. She positioned herself between them, one hand locating Danny's shoulder and drawing him backward. Her opposite hand trembled. She formed it into a fist so the motorcyclist wouldn't observe. William elevated both palms, retreating deliberately. Ma'am, I'm not. I'm indifferent to what you're not. Her voice emerged sharply, refined by 2 years of struggling and losing. You don't approach someone's child. Mom, he was acquainted with Dad. The statement impacted her like frigid water. She examined William properly, the vest, the patches, how he observed her with something resembling comprehension rather than offense. You're Rob's spouse, William stated quietly. It wasn't an inquiry. Lisa's grip on Danny's shoulder intensified. I don't know you. No, ma'am, you don't. I am William Cole. I traveled with your husband for 6 years. I was present at the memorial service. He paused, careful with his subsequent words. I was unaware Rob had a son. None of us knew. The admission cost her more than she wanted to reveal. That wasn't accidental. Danny looked upward at her, and she couldn't meet his gaze. How does one explain to a 10-year-old that you've been attempting to escape grief by pretending portions of their existence never occurred? That every mention of his father triggers visions of the mortgage you cannot pay, the college savings that disappeared, the future that ended on a rain-soaked highway? I'm not attempting to create difficulties, Williams said, but your child just revealed things about his father that. He stopped, recalibrated. He's been carrying this alone, hasn't he? We've managed adequately on our own. Have you? Because your son appears to be drowning. Earl had approached closer, still gripping his cloth. Ma'am, I knew your husband as well. Serviced his motorcycle. Decent man, settled his debts. He indicated William. These aren't harmful people. Lisa wanted to scream at the injustice. She devoted 2 years maintaining their survival, 2 years of extra shifts and denied insurance claims, and observing her son withdraw while she was too exhausted to reach him. And now strangers, men who knew Rob briefly, who shared journeys and bar expenses but not the mortgage or medical bills, were instructing her about her son's needs. But she also noticed how Danny was regarding William, as though he'd been sitting in darkness and someone finally opened the entrance. William retrieved his phone. I contacted some brothers. They're arriving here. I'd like you to meet them. Absolutely not. Mom, no. She was fragmenting and couldn't let him witness it. We don't know these individuals. They knew Dad. That doesn't mean. Her voice fractured. She compressed her lips, fighting for composure. When she spoke again, it emerged quieter, raw. Baby, I can't continue doing this. Every time we discuss him, I see everything we lost. I see the bills I can't pay. I see you getting hurt repeatedly. I'm attempting to maintain our stability. I'm already hurt, Danny said, and the simple honesty of it nearly collapsed her. The rumble of motors saved her from responding. 5 motorcycles entered the area in formation, parking in an organized line near William's bike. The riders dismounted, ranging from late 30s to beyond 60. They moved like men comfortable in their bodies and their position in the world. Point one remained distant, though, younger than the others, perhaps early 30s, with a fresh scar bisecting his left eyebrow. He maintained his distance, hands in pockets, observing the scene with something resembling guilt. William gestured toward the group. These are some individuals who travel with Rob. That's Jackson, Pete, Harry Ray. He indicated the one standing apart. That's Tommy. Tommy met Lisa's eyes briefly, then looked away. There was a narrative there, something incomplete. Mrs. Preston, Jackson said, his voice gravelly but gentle. We're not here to create problems. We just heard Rob's child was here, and we wanted to. He paused, searching for appropriate words. We wanted to ensure you both knew he mattered to more individuals than just you. We know he mattered, Lisa said, but her voice had lost its edge. Do you? William asked. Because from my perspective, it appears you've been trying exceptionally hard to ensure nobody remembers, including your son. It was excessively honest, excessively direct, and precisely what she needed to hear. Lisa looked down at Danny, saw the hope battling with fear on his face, and felt something in her finally surrender. What do you desire? She asked. Come to the clubhouse, William said. Let the child hear some narratives about his father. Let him know Rob was real, that he had companions, that his existence meant something beyond what it cost you when he died. He met her eyes. Your son needs to know his father wasn't merely the reason everything collapsed. Lisa stood there surrounded by motorcyclists and the ghost of the man she'd loved and lost, and realized she was too exhausted to continue fleeing. 1 hour, she said finally. 1 hour, and then we're departing. Danny's face broke into something that almost resembled relief. Tommy finally stepped forward, his voice quiet. Ma'am, I owe your family an apology. Your husband and I had words before he died. Stupid territorial nonsense that didn't matter. I never got to make it right with him. He looked at Danny. If it's acceptable, I'd like to make it right with his child. Lisa nodded, unable to speak past the constriction in her throat. William collected her fallen groceries, handed them to her gently. Follow us. It's not distant. The clubhouse wasn't what Lisa anticipated. No darkness, no danger, just a converted warehouse with motorcycles in various assembly stages lining the walls. Tools hung in organized arrangements. A wooden table dominated the central space, scarred with years of use, surrounded by mismatched chairs. It smelled like motor oil and coffee that had been sitting too long on a heating plate. Danny walked in ahead of her, absorbing everything with wide eyes. A woman adjusting a carburetor nodded at them without stopping. In the corner, two children played cards on an upturned crate. Sit anywhere, Williams said, gesturing to the table. You want coffee? It's terrible, but it's hot. Lisa shook her head. Danny climbed onto a chair, his feet not quite reaching the floor. The riders settled in around them with an ease suggesting they'd done this countless times, because they had. This was their space, their routine. Jackson dropped in a chair nearest Danny, groaning slightly as his knees protested. Getting old. He muttered to no one in particular. You've been old, Pete shot back, grabbing a beer from a mini refrigerator in the corner. Your father. Ray started, looking at Danny, couldn't navigate for anything. I mean, we'd be riding through 3 states, GPS on his phone, paper map in his saddlebag, and he'd still manage to lead us 20 miles in the wrong direction. William laughed, to sound genuine. Remember that trip to Sturgis? Rob swore he knew a shortcut. We ended up on a dirt road that dead-ended at somebody's horse pasture. The owner came out with a shotgun, Harry added, grinning. And Rob, just completely calm, asked the guy for directions like we hadn't just torn up his fence line. Danny's mouth twitched into something almost resembling a smile. He got lost constantly, Pete confirmed, but he never admitted it. He'd just say we were exploring alternative routes. The stories continued flowing, fragments of ordinary life, unpolished and authentic. The time Rob fixed a carburetor in a gas station parking lot in Montana using a Swiss Army knife and determination. How he always ordered hash browns at diners, even though everyone knew he hated them, claiming they were good for absorbing bad coffee. The way he'd sing off key to classic rock and not care who heard. Lisa sat rigid initially, braced for pain. But the pain she'd braced for never materialized. Instead, she found herself laughing at a story about Rob attempting to make scrambled eggs on a camping trip and somehow setting them on fire. She'd forgotten that aspect of him, the man who could rebuild an engine but couldn't cook to save his life. Jackson observed Danny more than he listened to the stories. The way the child tilted his head when concentrating, a slight furrow appearing between his eyebrows, how he wiped his hands on his jeans before touching the table, even though his hands were clean. Small gestures Jackson had seen countless times in Rob. Unconscious echoes passed from father to son. You know anything about bikes? Jackson asked during a lull in conversation. Danny shook his head. Mom says they're dangerous. They are, Jackson said honestly. So are cars. So is crossing the street. Your dad respected that danger. That's why he was careful. He stood, gestured toward the garage area. Come here. I'll show you something. Lisa tensed, but William caught her eye and shook his head slightly. Trust this. Danny followed Jackson to a partially disassembled Harley. Jackson crouched beside it, pointing to various components. This is the primary. See how it connects here? Your dad could take one of these apart and put it back together blindfolded. Really? Well, not blindfolded, but close. Jackson handed Danny a wrench. Here, see that bolt? Try loosening it. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Danny gripped the tool carefully, his face scrunching with concentration. That same expression Rob used to make. He struggled with the bolt for a moment before Jackson's larger hand covered his, adjusting the angle. Feel the difference? Danny nodded, and when the bolt finally gave way, his face lit up with accomplishment. The two children in the corner had abandoned their card game and wandered over. The older one, a girl with her father's dark hair, introduced herself as Maya. Your dad died, too? She asked Danny with the bluntness only kids can manage. Yeah, mine died in Colorado. Rolled his bike on black ice. She said it matter-of-factly, without drama. It sucks, but it gets less sharp. The younger boy, Carlos, added, My dad's still around. He's the one who made that terrible coffee. He grinned. Your dad sounds like he was cool. He was, Danny said quietly, and realized he'd said it in present tense for the first time in months. Nobody had talked about his father this way. Like he was real, like he mattered beyond the grief. As the afternoon transitioned into evening, Lisa watched her son operate in a space where grief wasn't treated like something fragile or contaminated. It simply existed alongside everything else. The laughter, the work, the casual profanity, the shared meals. Nobody tiptoed around it. Nobody treated Danny like he might shatter. Jackson stayed close without hovering, answering questions patiently, his hand steady on Danny's shoulder when the boy seemed uncertain about something. It wasn't announced or formalized, but Lisa recognized what she was seeing. Someone stepping into a space that had been empty too long. Tommy approached her quietly as the others talked. Your husband was right about the thing we argued over. I was being territorial and stupid. I wanted you to know that. He never mentioned it, Lisa said, because he was a better man than I was. Tommy's jaw worked. I didn't come to the funeral. Thought I didn't deserve to be there. But I should have checked on you on the kid. We all should have. Lisa nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. When she finally glanced at her watch, 3 hours had passed. Danny was elbow deep in helping Jackson clean parts in a solvent bath, chattering about gear ratios with the confidence of someone who'd found his people. Lisa thought they might actually survive this. The visit started cautiously, 3-hour windows that gradually stretched to 5 hours, then full afternoons. By the time winter settled in, Danny had his own workspace in the corner, a small bench with a toolbox Jackson had given him for Christmas. He learned to change oil properly, to read the subtle differences in engine sounds that meant something needed attention. Jackson taught him patience, how rushing a repair only meant doing it twice. When Danny stripped a bolt trying to force it, Jackson didn't get angry. He just handed him the extractor kit and said, "Now you know why we don't muscle it." The club helped in ways that weren't announced or formalized. When Lisa's car started making an ominous, grinding noise, William told her to bring it by. 3 hours later, she drove away with new brake pads and rotors. And when she tried to pay, Pete waved her off. Rob would have done it for any of us. Ray's wife worked in hospital administration and mentioned an opening for a nurse coordinator position, better pay, regular hours, closer to home. Lisa got the interview, got the job, and stopped waking at 3 a.m. calculating bills in fear. Danny hit middle school carrying less weight than most kids his age, but carrying it differently. When classmates complained about their parents, he stayed quiet. When Father's Day assignments came around and the teacher offered him an out, he declined. He wrote about his dad and turned it in without apology. At T13, he made his first real mistake at the clubhouse. He'd rushed rebuilding a clutch assembly, wanting to prove himself. The parts didn't seat right. When Jackson test rode the bike, the clutch slipped dangerously. He brought the bike back, shut it down, and looked at Danny for a long moment. "You know what you did wrong?" Danny nodded, miserable. "I didn't check the tolerance." "Why not?" "I thought I didn't need to." Jackson sat on the workbench, considering. "Pride will get you killed on a bike. It'll get someone else killed, too. Your dad knew that. He triple-checked everything because other people's lives depended on it." He paused. "You're better than this. Do it again properly." Danny tore the whole assembly apart and rebuilt it from scratch. Took 4 hours. Jackson watched the entire time, not helping, just present.by 15. Danny had height on him, nearly 6 feet, all lanky limbs he hadn't quite grown into. He'd started helping younger kids who came through the way Jackson had helped him, a 9-year-old named Kevin, whose mother had just joined the club's extended family after her partner died in a workplace accident, shadowed Danny everywhere. "Why do you have to clean it so much?" Kevin asked, watching Danny degrease a chain for the third time. "Because dirt is the enemy," Danny said, repeating something Jackson had told him years ago. "You take care of your machine, it takes care of you." He showed Kevin how to properly torque bolts, how to listen for the click that meant you'd hit the spec, patient in ways he hadn't known he could be. Lisa watched her son navigate adolescence with the kind of community she'd try to protect him from. She watched him argue with Tommy about the right way to tune a carburetor, actual disagreement, raised voices, and then watched them reconcile over pizza an hour later, the conflict resolved and forgotten. This was the part she'd been afraid of, seeing Danny become part of something she couldn't control. But control, she was learning, had never been the point. Connection was that T16. Danny asked Jackson a question he'd been holding for months. "Did you know my dad was going to crash that day?" Jackson set down the socket wrench he'd been holding. "No, nobody ever knows. But you think about it. What if you've been there? What if you could have changed something?" "Every day for the first year," Jackson admitted. But Rob made his own choices. He knew the risks. He rode anyway because the freedom mattered more than the fear. He looked at Danny directly. You blame anyone for it? I used to blame Mom for not stopping him. And now I think she loved him enough to let him be who he was. Jackson nodded slowly. That's the hard part. Loving people means letting them take risks. Means accepting you can't protect them from everything. When Danny turned 18, he'd accumulated enough hours in the garage to find work at a legitimate shop across town. Good pay, decent benefits, a boss who recognized skill when he saw it. He still came to the clubhouse 3 nights a week, not because he had to, but because it was home in Waze's apartment with Lisa wasn't 0.6 months into dating Sophie. She asked if he'd ever ride. Rain drummed on the windshield between them. I don't know, Danny said honestly. Sometimes I think I should. Other times I think it'd destroy my mom. What do you think your dad would want? For me to choose for myself. It was the truest thing he'd said in months that on a Saturday morning in early spring, Danny stood in the clubhouse workshop teaching Kevin, now 12 and finally tall enough to reach most tools without a step stool, how to properly gap spark plugs. See this measurement? This is critical. Too wide, you get misfires. Too narrow, you get weak ignition. Kevin squinted at the gap tool, tongue poking out in concentration. The same expression Danny used to make, the same one his father had made before him. Jackson watched from across the room, arms crossed, pride settled in his chest, quiet and earned. Lisa arrived to pick up some paperwork William had helped her file, insurance stuff, bureaucratic loose ends from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. Now she saw her son bent over a workbench, patient and capable, passing forward what had been given to him. He's good at this, William said, appearing at her elbow. He is. Rob would be proud. Lisa smiled, and for once it didn't hurt. Yeah, he would. Danny glanced up, caught his mother's eye, and grinned. Not the careful, protective expression he'd worn for years, but something genuine and unguarded. The grief was still there. It always would be, but it had been integrated into something larger now, woven into a life built on memory and community and choice. Outside, engines rumbled to life as a group prepared for a ride. Inside, a kid learned about tolerance and precision from someone who'd learned it the same way. Sometimes the people who rescue us aren't the ones we anticipate. They're strangers at fuel stations who stop long enough to listen. That what's a moment when someone appeared for you when you needed it most? Share your story in the comments. And if this one resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. We'll see you in the next story.